Everybody, welcome to the Orazio Pagani Museo. Today we will discover something about the history of Mr. Pagani and also something about our production department. So here we are inside the museum, and here you can see we have the most representative creations that Mr. Pagani did in his early life, starting from Argentina, where he was born in 1955 in a small town named Casilda near to Santa Fe. Well, the Pagani family owned a bakery in the town, even if the greatest passion of Mr. Pagani drew him to the automotive world. So completely different world compared to the family business, we can say. Well, at the age of 12 years old, Mr. Pagani started crafting small car models using any kind of material he was able to find at home, such as wood, for example, or tin from cans, writing pen parts, jewel beads, and many others. It is here, during this experience, that he realized his dream was to come here to Modena and to design and craft his own supercar. From that moment on, everything he did was to gain the experience in the construction field until he was able to craft the Formula 2 that you can see right next to us. This single-seater raced in the national competitions in Argentina, and thanks to it, Horatio was able to get in touch with Juan Manuel Fangio, the many times world champion of Formula 1. So Fangio believed in the potential and in the dream of the young Horatio, so he wrote several presentation letters addressed to the major car factory here in the Motor Valley. So over here you can see the letter addressed to Enzo Ferrari, for example, one of the 5 he wrote. Well, despite these letters, Mr. Pagani couldn't get any jobs. It was a crisis period, especially in the automotive world, but Mr. Pagani didn't give up. So together with his wife, Christina, they settled in Italy anyway, and he tried to do the most different jobs until Mr. Pagani went back knocking on the doors of Lamborghini. He was so resolute that finally he managed to get a job in the company, but not as a designer, as he desired. Instead, he got a job as a simple employer in the body workshop department. Over there in Lamborghini, he was able to know and get in touch with composite materials, especially carbon fiber, where he crafted one of the very first prototype that never went on production, the Countach Evoluzione that you can see here in the picture. This car gave Horatio the possibility to understand what was needed to craft this kind of material, barely used in Formula 1 at the time. Specifically, we are talking about autoclaves. So Mr. Pagani asked Lamborghini to purchase one of these autoclaves, but the answer was a negative one. It was not so cheap. But with this temperament, with this stoic temperament, Mr. Pagani decided to go to the Bank of Sant'Agata to ask for a loan and to purchase the autoclave by himself. Well, he couldn't place his own autoclave inside Lamborghini, and that's when he started his own company. At first, he was still working inside Lamborghini, and then in 1992, he moved in here in San Cesario, and he settled in here in our historical building, calling it Modena Design. So Modena Design was a company not only working on composite materials for cars, but also in designing other components. So with Modena Design, during the day, he worked for many other companies such as Aprilia, Dallara. So over here you can see the historical building and some design projects. So with Modena Design, during the nighttime, he finally found the time to work on his car dream. So that's when he started working on the project of the very first Pagani car, the Zonda C12. The Zonda C12 was presented completely homologated to the Geneva Motor Show in 1999. And it had a great success, especially one of the reasons was that the car was born with a Mercedes engine from an unknown company. Here in the museum, you can see the most representative versions of the Zonda model, from the first one to one of the most recent, Zonda R, that you can see over here, with the engine bonnet taken off. This is because Mr. Pagani, since he got in touch with the philosophy of Leonardo da Vinci during his adolescence period, he always tried to craft his own cars following that philosophy. And it means that we choose our partners among those who craft following traditional methods. Everything is refined by hand. So for example, no 3D printers are allowed. Interior components that usually are hidden to observers are refined perfectly, just as exterior surfaces. Every single metallic component is milled from solid and refined by hand, even the wheels of the car. And even in such a racing version, where R means racing, even if this car ever entered competitions. So it's not our goal to compete in car racing. The reason of these names comes from the homologation. In fact, this version is not homologated for standard street. It is the lightest Pagani ever, with 1,070 kilos and 750 horsepower. We produced in total 10 Zonda R. Well, actually, Zonda was not homologated for United States streets, and for each of the versions of Zonda, we had also a limited number over which client couldn't buy the version and must order the next one. The maximum number of production we've had for Zonda F, it's 25 version of the coupe and 25 of the roadsters. This has changed completely from the version, from the model of Huayra coupe that you can see over here. In our first edition, we produced 100 chassis of this edition, mainly because this car opened the US market in 2011. The one that you can see over here is the trial car that we used for the official presentation in the same year, so 2011. Huayra, the name comes from the South American culture, and it is the god of the wind for the native tribes. So that's why Huayra has explored a typical kind of aerodynamic that we can find also in the aviation or in airplanes, and I'm talking about the active aerodynamic system. So besides from the gull wing doors and the aerodynamic design, you can see the flaps on bonnets. We have 2 on the frontal one and 2 on the rear one, and these flaps move according to car movement to keep the grip on the road and to help the car in slowing down. This is the last car in the museum, so now we can go inside the factory. Behind me you can see the cutting machine room, where the pre-preg reels are pre-cutted and sent inside the composite material department to be laid up on molds. We use up to 40 different formulas of advanced composite materials, among which we have carbotitanium and carbotriox. In here, also in here, everything is handcrafted. For each single component, we do have papers to monitor every single step of the construction process. Once every single layer will be laid up on the molds, we will close the mold up and pack it with a plastic folder to create the void inside. And then the vacuum bag will be sent downstairs to be baked inside autoclaves. This phases of the construction is vital, and especially precision is vital, because laying up procedure is usually done backward, meaning that the first layer is also the layer that we will see on the outside of the car. Putting components under void allows us to reduce the occurrence of imperfections such as bubble air on components. Bubble air are considered structural imperfection and cannot be allowed on the part. That's why workers, especially in these phases, must keep the highest attention and precision possible to avoid any kind of imperfections on the component, because composite materials are not yet fully recyclable, and making an imperfection will mean the reconstruction of the whole part. This is the autoclaves room. Vacuum bags are sent over here and then placed inside these machines for the polymerization procedure. This step is done under 6 bar pressure and 140 degrees Celsius. The baking time can last from 1 hour for smallest and decorative parts, up to 4 hours for the biggest components such as the tub. You can see here the very first autoclave that Pagani bought back in the 80s. It is still running today and dedicated to the R&D department. The other two, the biggest, nowadays we do own, are dedicated for the components of cars that have already been bought by client. So after the extraction from autoclaves, the rough components are quality checked in the next department and then sent inside the ventilation booth to be cleaned from the exceeding resin thanks to the trimming procedure. So our ventilated booths have regulations of the interior climate and environment, so it's easier for the workers to stay inside many times, many hours, to work perfectly. And once every single body part of the car has been smoothed on all edges and surfaces, they will be pre-assembled on the testing frame. During this fundamental quality check called the testing frame, we make sure that every exterior component closes together properly, and we do the alignment. This is the starting point of this test. You can see here the central shell over which we will assemble all of the exterior parts of the car. Aligning body parts means that we need to control that every single gaps in between body parts measure exactly the same dimension, and also that the texture of every single lines of the carbon fiber and composite materials match together from one component to another as if they were crafted from a single part. You can see the mold with this rough component, white side mirror US edition. Molds are crafted by us and they can be used up to 150 times, and this is how it looks without the vacuum bag. This is the starting point of pre-assembly phase. In this station, we insert the engine inside the steel chrome molybdenum frame. The engine comes already pre-assembled by EMG Mercedes, and then our workers will arrange all of the other mechanical parts, such as, for example, the gearbox, the axle shafts, the wirings and tubes, the exhaust systems, the braking one. Then they will send the two metallic frames to the opposite station so we can start assembling the final car. This is the interior trim pre-assembly stations, and in here you can see some details client can customize inside their vehicles. Over here you can see the negative block of the car logo, the part from which the logo it is carved out and then refined by hand. This is the first station of the assembly area where we will assemble together the two metallic frames and the carbo-titanium central shell. In this station, we do also switch on the engine for the first time inside the chassis. And if this test is considered pass, that's when the rest of the team will start assembling all of the other components on the chassis. Once the car is fully assembled, we will test it on the street to check that everything works properly before sending it to the owner.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining this live talk today. Thank you also to the Motor Valley Fest organization, giving us the amazing opportunity to celebrate cars, passion, and this very unique piece of land, the Motor Valley in Italy, where many exclusive manufacturers decided to start their business. And not just in the past, but recently as well. So since the Maserati brothers in the early of the century, and they decided to move from Bologna to Modena, their business due to the skills related to the carriage manufacturing at the time in this area. And then Ferrari came, Lamborghini, Dallara, and Pagani. There is a strong network of workers, skills, and artisans that took actually place in this area. And the young Mr. Pagani decided then to move to Italy, following also the suggestion of his mentor, Manuel Fangio, and started a very unique approach to design and car manufacturing. But the reason for which this actually became a business and a symbol of hypercar design, it's also related to some of the main principles that are used within the design process, some quality aspect and manufacturing aspect within the company that we will present you today. So let me show you a short presentation where we're gonna see these aspects. So we mentioned a very unique approach, and but the point is, how did it take place? And what is the foundation of this design process? It is an innovative development process and based on concurrent engineering and aim to optimize all the available resources, minimizing time to market and increasing the level of innovation. But when talking about hypercars, obviously there are some key aspects that are fundamental since the very beginning of the project. So when thinking about an hypercar, there are some physics and some aspects related to the car itself, such as the low inertia, the low weight, the very low center of gravity to manage strong handling condition, and this is to hit an improve of performance and safety in in all the aspects of the vehicle. Dividing the car into some specific areas, so divided like such as the composite and the electronics and the mechanics, for instance. We have also created a group of workers that are really specialized in certain aspects. So the car is divided into chassis, suspension, braking system, electronic system, lighting, and so on. And the group of workers, so the design office is also divided into specific skills, but also it includes a very immersive process where designers are heavily involved all along the process, from the very beginning, from the very concept of the car or the system to the actual prototyping and the manufacturings. We also have a lot of design and manufacturing aspects related to the interiors of the cars, such as you can think about seats that normally are part of the car that can easily be bought from a seat manufacturer, or other specific details such as the dials or the cluster. In terms of vehicle development, there are many phases related to the system and the prototypes development for the new projects. So you can imagine from the actual testing activities, either on the street or on the track, software calibration, ergonomics aspects, handling, and performance. But we also have two other design flow where the subject is not directly related to the hypercar, but to other aspects of the industry. So we are talking about merchandise, we are talking about the industrial design. So those are non-hypercars related projects, but you can imagine how much of the design can actually flow and feed to this specific aspect of the business. Some of our customers, they also want the Pagani design details for their houses, or you can imagine the dealership, or just when talking about like obviously fun gadgets for gloves, shirts, or caps, but that is all created in the same office. So the same designer working on the car are also the ones working on the merchandise and in the other aspect of the design of the company. There are many tools that we have to consider for the entire process, and some of them can be easily compared on the web, just to have you a brief update on what we actually use as a tool, starting from the 3D modeling tools to give shape to the idea, so to actual modeling from surfaces to parametric modeling. For the surface, so the explicit modeling, we're using Alias Automotive, and for the parametric, we use PTC Creo. So we have two different software in order to integrate the specific functions. We do have a finite element analysis tool to evaluate different design solutions and define the optimum solution based on the structural requirements. We work on the computational fluid dynamic to work on the aero and the thermal side of the car. We work on the model-based design to generate the mathematical models to solve specific design problems. And we also have vehicle dynamics tools to develop and test the vehicle performance in advance. So as you can imagine, there is behind these numbers, there is a strong investment in order to bring leading edge technology to our cars. More than 30% of the human capital, so more than 30% of the employees are dedicated to research and development activities. And in terms of annual revenue, the investment exceeds the 11%. The result of this specific process has a very concrete, I would say, definition in the car that can be seen, that can be analyzed, starting from the composite technology, which is it is very close to Mr. Pagani's personal history that started more than 30 years ago, building a unique know-how and expertise, and also developing proprietary composite materials and metal alloys. In the early 90s, the first application of an exclusive prepreg for aesthetic solution for the bodywork actually has been used on the first time on a Zonda S that is actually still with us, and it is a piece of history for us, giving the opportunity to have an A-class finish achieved 10 years earlier than the rest of the industry. Now this kind of material that has an evolution, obviously, that bring us a more mechanical performance, is still with us, but also we've developed over the last 10 years other specific exclusive prepregs based on carbon fiber and titanium alloy. They are known as carbo titanium, but also the carbo triax HP52 and HP62. This exclusive solution with high modulus carbon fiber based on multi-axial prepreg that gave us the opportunity to redesign the concept behind the chassis, increasing the torsional and the bending stiffness. Also giving us the opportunity to define the very first roadster car, lighter compared to the equivalent coupe back in 2017 with the Wayra Roadster. But not just composite, the active aerodynamic was also another innovative system that was applied for the first time on a Wayra, consisting in 4 independent flaps, electronically controlled by a CPU that give us the opportunity to calibrate and move the center of pressure of the car, depending on the driving condition, and such as braking or cornering, where we need to compensate certain forces, let's say, as a sum of the weight and the aero loads of the car, restoring the balance or contributing to a higher grip of the car. So the process that is behind this result is represented in this slide here. It is based on the harmony between the aesthetic aspects and the scientific aspects in the design of the car. So we want to merge the functional requirements and the aesthetic requirement into a unique definition, driving emotion to anyone who can see the car or a part of it. And this is applied not just to the car as a whole, but it is also applied to the specific parts of the car. So you can think, you can imagine that a Wayra is made up of approximately 10,000 individual parts. So the idea is to apply this kind of methodology to each of these parts in order to have an harmony like an orchestra singing when opening a bonnet or opening the car, looking at the interiors. So the very first step of the process is related to the feasibility study, where we evaluate timeline, resources, required to fulfill the project. There is a strong cooperation between the project management, the design aspect, the homologation, and other functions like the purchasing function. With that, the subsequent step is the concept definition, where we create what is a preliminary architecture of the car, and we study also some of the main aesthetic and technical aspect of the car in terms of performance, in terms of stylistic research, and then we select what we believe that the customer would like. And I think that is an important point, because we not necessarily do what we like in general. The focus is to find a way to create emotions to customers, the ones that will own the car and the ones that will desire the car. So we put all these things all together, and then once the concept is defined, we then jump into the actual design and engineering phase, where a detailed design phase, including the refinement and the stylistic research, the engineering of the parts, analysis of each requirement, and this is where we have a deep dive with 3D modeling, hands calculation, FEM analysis, and all these things to come to the actual part design. Once the part is designed and once all the technical documentation is ready, we have to face then the prototyping process of the cars, which is made of each individual part. So we have to follow with the supply chain and the interior parts, the interior manufacturing process, to make sure that all the requirements are reflected into the actual manufacturing process as well. But then each part needs to be assembled to the prototype car, obviously, to start the validation, so the development and validation phase. So a wide array of tests aim to verify the project in a real life condition and define on the requirements of the final product. So the overall project has to meet certain requirements also to fulfill warranty, but also to fulfill regulation for all the countries that will be involved in the certification process for the car, for the specific model. And the very last bit is the industrialization and the production of the cars, where we help the production to take place with the customer's car, and we finalize all the paperwork, and here is where the design process really ends. So it's a sum of many details. We mentioned emotions, we mentioned the beauty and the aesthetic, the handmade process. So it's really related to the artisan here at Pagani, but also functionality, the best composite material, the low weight, endurance, and the cutting edge technology. So all these things together bring the result that you probably know. It is not just thanks to our team, but also thanks to a long-lasting partnership with the best players in the industry. So we, in the overall 20 years, we've been able to create a solid and long-lasting partnership with specific best-in-class players in the automotive world. Mercedes-AMG is one of the examples where the collaboration with Mercedes started thanks to Manuel Fangio, and at the beginning it was a supply, I would say, of an engine with certain requirement that Pagani desired to have in the cars. But nowadays, the development, it is a very exclusive development of specific engines that are made bespokely for Pagani. So the iconic V12 that you can see on the cars. Not just AMG, but also Bosch for the development of the unified control unit dedicated to the ESP system, the dynamic vehicle and the dynamic vehicle development, and Brembo for the development of the state-of-the-art the braking system, enabling the highest performance level in terms of braking power and management. Pirelli is one of the maybe the most recent. The collaboration with Pirelli started 10 years ago, but it gave us the opportunity for both of the companies to develop specific tire solution, such as the Trofeo R HP that you can see on the Huayra Roadster BC, that perfectly suits the necessities in terms of vehicle performance. And so with Pirelli, we have a lot of tire virtual design, joint tests in order to calibrate the compound and hit the development target to define the specific tires that you can see then on the Pagani, such as the Roadster BC. The overall process that we've mentioned, it's also related to some specific phases within the company in terms of bottom-up approach for the new technology introductions. So starting from the materials development, where we have a laboratory and testing specimen defined to create maps and mechanical characteristics of the new materials, applicative tests for the process, and experimentations for the combination of more than one material, and obviously environmental and aging tests. But we also have to do test bench for the specific components or specific systems. So from the material level to the component or system level. This test bench is made specifically designed in Pagani to define the conditions where the system operates in order to evaluate the results of the system in a real-life condition before introducing them into the prototype cars. So the overall process for a new model development, it counts more than 1 million kilometers for the entire validation, and more than 50 crash tests for each new model produced. It is a lot of crash tests because we don't certify and sell the cars just in Europe, but we sell the cars all around the world. So we have to fulfill all the regulation, including the very stringent regulation, American regulation, like the Californians. Looking at the manufacturing process of the car, there are some phases that Ilaria has just shown you with the virtual tour, but the most important thing that we want to share with you today, just not the phases, but also what is behind the artisan team and the engineers guaranteeing the quality and the precision in every single activity, down to the very small detail to create a unique piece of automotive art. Roughly, the manufacturing of a new car, so not talking about the design process, but I'm talking about the actual manufacturing phases, it's about 4 months, 4 to 6 months, depending on the specific model and the complexity. We do most of the things in-house because we believe that starting from the layup phase to the trimming, to the autoclave phase, the assembly and the testing and approval. We believe that it is very important to keep the knowledge in-house and to have a unique vision and a unified approach to the overall result represented by the car. And now we will show you a very short video related to one of the latest car presented, the Huayra Tricolore, giving us the opportunity to see the result of this process.
Nota negativa il fuoritutti del 5 con filo ampio e fermato d'ala.
Tricolore 5 velivoli bar per il campo e chiede taxi 24. E siamo pronti. Torre, le frecce tricolori pronte alla partenza.
Frecce tricolori torre autorizzati al decollo pista 24, 30 gradi 7 nodi.
Con nome 2, colorati, via.
Well, welcome back. We are running out with our time, so we will basically run the Q&A moment. We would like just to give you some idea of the basically the main profiles that we usually are looking for. So especially for the R&D department, of course, as you can imagine, we are looking especially for designers, composite designers and mechanical designers and electronic designers. So if you feel to be interested to apply, of course you can go on our website and to apply for them. We are always looking for talent, and this is why we are here today. We are looking for people and talented people, and so yes, please feel free to apply if you feel if you are interested in our company. We are now going through the Q&A moment. Well, the first question, which is the typical recruitment process. Well, the recruitment process is a quite standard one, well, as you can imagine, we check the applications on our website and LinkedIn as well. So we use both the website, and then depending on the role and the seniority, we have typically 2 or 3 interviews. The first interview is mainly focused on soft skills and previous experiences. Then we have a second interview more focused on technical skills. So depending on the role, we go deep on these skills required to the role. Often for the R&D position, Mr. Orazio Pagani asked for a quick interview, and at the end of the recruitment process, because he really is interested to know the person and also to share his vision. Okay, so I leave to Francesco the second question.
Okay, thanks, Riccardo. The question is, which are the main tools used for vehicle dynamics, both for virtual modeling and physical testing? Well, we have used in the past ADAMS as a multi-body analysis tool. It was very helpful on specific phases on the project. Very handful and also very flexible. But also we used car real time to see specific aspect of the vehicle's performance. And when physical testing the car, we have obviously a lot of sensor and things installed in the car that are related to the CAN system and the CPU. So we have WindoWrap as an interface to get the data, compare the data with the expected results, and plot, manipulate data in order to evaluate the progress of the project and make technical decisions. Another question from Enrico. Is right design a car that like to the customer, or is better to design a car that would generate new and different emotion in the customers? But that's a very interesting question, and it is not black or white, I would say. There is no, when I mentioned earlier that we have to consider and we have to design something that that our customers like. It means that we are not designing, creating and manufacturing the cars for us. We are creating the cars for our customers, and we might have specific criteria, principles, vision that obviously they don't change when they are related to Mr. Pagani's vision. But in terms of taste and some specific choices, I believe that it's very important to take into account the customer expectation. And it also has changed a lot over the last 10 years. You can imagine that in the hypercar segment, 20 years ago, the customers were usually self-made men or people in the industry or famous people. So most of them, they have created their own, I would say, their own revenues and everything in their life. So they had specific values, and they had also specific icons in their head and in their personal history. Maybe the cars that they have dreamed when they were kids. But now we are in 2021, and some of our customers are also very young, and maybe they have you know, a fortune coming from their family, for instance. So they might have different values. They also have seen different kind of things when they were kids. So it changes. So it is important to stay on track and to understand the changes in terms of design, taste, and society, but still having a unique approach to create something timeless, which is what we believe is the most important thing. Another question, Alessandra says, is Orazio Pagani still actively contributing to the design process? Well, Mr. Pagani is our CEO, but also the chief designer of the company. So he has a very important contribute in the overall process of developing a new model, especially in the stylistic research and the design input. So he has his own vision of the car, and the mission of the team is to translate his vision into something real.
Okay, well, unfortunately, our time is running out. So thank you very much for being here today. Even in this virtual visit, I hope that you have enjoyed and that you get a bit of the Pagani passion. Thank you very much. Goodbye and see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.